The Crystal Keepers. Chapter 9. Was it luck or fate? 70 years later. Sean felt something smack against his arm, waking him from his daze. "What do you think?" Spencer asked. "Should we check it out?" Sean regained focus on the laptop screen sitting in front of them. There was a picture of a cliff face in the middle of a pine forest with an abandoned mine shaft digging into its side. "What's this?" Sean asked. "What, you didn't read it?" "Sorry, I was dozing off again. Just tell me what it says." Sean rubbed his eyes and yawned, trying his best to pay attention. "It doesn't matter what they have to say. All that matters is that there could be gold in them there hills." Sean stared at Spencer, feeling annoyed. His friend was always cooking up some insane plan to get either of them rich quick. This one had about as much of a chance of succeeding as any other of their crazy endeavors, which always ended the same, with less money than they began with. "You're not serious, right?" Spencer gaped at Sean's obviously careless attitude. He pressed his lips together and glared at him. "Oh, I'm serious, and we're going to check it out." Spencer stood from Sean's computer chair and headed for the door. Sean didn't. He stayed sitting at the table with his head resting against his hands like stilted pillows. "Can't we just play a video game or something? I'm so tired." "Dude, how are you ever going to get a girlfriend if you just stay inside all the time?" Sean turned to Spencer, feeling his ears grow hot. He always brought up girls when the two of them couldn't agree on something. "What does this have to do with girls? We're going to an abandoned mine shaft because you have delusions about leftover gold." "That's right, man. We're like explorers or something. Imagine if we did find some gold. Who would have all the chicks then? You and me, buddy." Sean felt like a dry well. He couldn't comprehend how someone could be so brainless. "You really think that if we find some gold, every girl in town will forget how annoying you are?" Spencer seemed offended, but mostly surprised. "No, but they might notice I exist. Unlike you." Sean decided it wasn't worth arguing. He sat up from his chair and walked towards the door. "Next time, we're playing a video game." "I've always been partial to movies, but whatever." Sean led Spencer into the hallway outside his room. He noticed his grandfather sitting in his wheelchair in the room across from his. The old man was staring into the forest from his second-floor window. He could be so still at times, Sean would wonder if he was dead. "Hey, is your grandpa all right, man?" "Yeah, he's fine. He just sits there a lot these days." "Why?" "I think because of what he went through in the Vietnam War," Sean said. "He was a helicopter pilot. He must have seen some pretty messed up stuff too, because he almost never talks about it." "That's crazy," Spencer whispered. "I bet he saved a lot of soldiers." "That's how I see it. My grandpa says he feels more like he delivered good men to their deaths. But then he just says, 'That's war,' and stops talking about it." Spencer stared at Sean's grandpa with quiet admiration. After a moment, they descended the stairs into Sean's living room. His sister Sarah was brushing her long blonde hair while watching cartoons from the couch. His mom was in the kitchen making lunch. "I'm going outside, Mom. Bye. I love you." "Love you too, son," Sean heard her reply from the kitchen. "Be careful, and don't stay out too late." "Where are you guys going?" Sarah asked. "To look for gold," Spencer replied in a southern accent. Sean followed him through the front door and onto the porch. The air outside was frosty. Winter was approaching fast, and the howling wind was showing itself for the first time all year. Sean liked winter best, the season when the snows would set in. He shivered with excitement as he shut his front door. "Let's go," Spencer said, descending the porch steps. Sean walked down the stairs and onto the road. He scanned the empty cul-de-sac where his family's home was located. His house was the only one there. The rest of the buildings were skeletons, raw wood frames with a few loose boards halfway nailed on. They had never been finished before the economy crashed. His home was a two-story building with a bright white paint job just at the entrance to the circle. Sean caught up next to Spencer before he got too far ahead. "What's today again?" Spencer asked as Sean approached. "Friday, perceptive one." "So that's why everyone at school kept saying have a good weekend." Sean laughed. "Man, you need to stop using calendars and just get a phone. It's messing up your perception of time." "The last thing I'm gonna do is bring a traceable microphone into my house. Next thing you know, the government will ban window blinds and install cameras on every corner." Sean gave a dry laugh. He had heard that explanation so many times before it was beginning to grow stale. "Just keep telling yourself that. Maybe those apocalypse survival kits your dad bought will actually come in handy one day." "Maybe they will," Spencer said, an edge working into his voice. Sean and Spencer kept walking, twisting their way through the miles of pine forest that covered the mountains of McGregor, Wisconsin. The road was old and full of potholes, leading to a mostly abandoned part of town near the sawmill and train graveyard. Ahead, at the left side of the road, was a dirt trail leading deep into the trees. Cold winds whistled noisily through the branches, causing creaks and moans to fill the midday air. Strong scents of pine only became stronger as they approached. Sean examined an old wooden sign stuck in the dirt near the trail's entrance. It was rotted and chipped, but beneath the grime were painted red letters. "Danger. Abandoned mine shaft. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Based on the age and condition of the sign, they decided the city probably forgot the place even existed. Sean and Spencer navigated over the chain hanging across the trail and continued their journey. As they moved along the dirt road, dead leaves and fallen twigs would crunch and crackle under their feet. He and Spencer were winding down the dirt path without a care in the world, one of them without any expectations at all of what they might find. But Sean did begin to feel a strange sensation, a hint of foreboding in the air, an uneasiness to the peaceful symphony that carried the breeze around him and his best friend. As Sean and Spencer descended deeper into the trees, into the darkness beneath the woods, they noticed rusted and grimy tools everywhere around the trail. Pickaxes lay strewn about the dirt, broken and rotted hard hats tipped over wheelbarrows. Sean wondered if they had been abandoned by the owners on purpose or just left behind when the tunnels collapsed. Sean saw a pole with frayed and broken electrical wires hanging nearly to the ground. He wondered if they still had electricity in them. He decided it was best to not find out. Quickly, the smell of pine was being replaced by a moldy and rotted musk. Smoke was joined with wet dog as the odors became more and more disgusting. "What is that smell?" Spencer yelled. "I don't know. It stinks really bad. Smells like something died." Sean pulled his shirt over his nose to block the foul fragrance. "Yeah, it's pretty rank." Ahead was a cliff with another sign at its edge. This one was made of metal and had thick screws digging into its concrete base. Shiny silver letters on red paint read, "Danger, 40-foot drop-off." Sean peeked over the edge of the cliff and scanned for whatever might be making the nauseating smell, but the coast was clear. Giant cracked boulders in a small grassy clearing sat nestled into the rock wall below. He and Spencer knelt and dropped from the edge of the cliff to the boulders, which made a winding trail to the bottom. They walked along a precariously thin path that brought them to the base of the cliff. "Yep, this is the place from the website," Spencer observed. At the bottom, sunlight fluttered through leaves and trees, projecting scattered shadows over everything in sight. The rotting, burning smell seemed to die down, now that the wind was blowing again, and although Sean had noticed it had been cool outside earlier, here under the trees, the temperature was as cold as ice. Digging straight into the rock wall beside them was a wide wooden room with a door laying half broken off its hinges. Spencer approached the building alone and immediately stepped inside. "Hey man, be careful. We still don't know where that smell was coming from." What are you, my mom now, too? When a bear eats your face off, don't try and say I didn't warn you. The wooden room was silent for long enough to make Sean worry. Spencer finally replied, "Oh, man. We're not going to be finding any gold today. All that's here is a deep, dark pit and a rope that's been cut. Looks like they really didn't want anyone going down there after it collapsed." Spencer shuffled out of the mine entrance with his eyes on the floor. "Well, this was a waste of time," he complained. Sean scratched his forehead and yawned. "I knew it would end this way. Not to be Mr. I told you so or anything. It's okay. At least we tried. Plus, maybe we can come back with a rope ladder and some flares and go down there all ninja style one day. It's flooded, remember? We would need scuba gear to go down there." Spencer walked past Sean and squinted, ignoring the added concerns. "Is that what I think it is?" Sean looked to the place where Spencer was staring and saw a large dirt mound with a black handle sticking out from its side. Spencer ran towards the bulge and brushed it clean. A dial was revealed, and then a metal door with rusty hinges. It was a safe. "There's gotta be gold in here. What do you think?" Sean went over to the box beside Spencer, eyeing it suspiciously. "I mean, maybe. At least we don't have to explore a flooded mine shaft to find it." Spencer looked at the box with glowing eyes. "It must be something the company forgot to grab after they packed up and left. Well, I obviously don't know the combination. Maybe I could bust it open with some of my dad's tools. Help me get it out of the ground, will you?" Sean sighed. He walked over and grabbed the metal handle attached to the door. Spencer squeezed the carrying handle on top with both hands. Together they readied their stances. "Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, pull!" Sean and Spencer yanked on the safe with all their combined strength, ripping away the large mound of dirt in the process. The box shifted out from its perfectly shaped hole and left a muddy trail in the grass as they dragged it away. Sean and Spencer brought it to a dry spot and released the box. Then both of them stood up straight, supporting their backs with their hands. "Man, that thing was heavy," Spencer said, pressing his lower back until his spine had straightened. "Yeah, no kidding," Sean replied. "I wonder why they left it here." Spencer froze, seemingly disturbed by Sean's last question. He slowly replied, "'Cause it's probably filled with gold." Based on his tone, Sean believed that Spencer had finally come to terms with the fact that there was likely no gold in the safe, and it brought him a small surge of joy. "Why do you always have to think so much?" Spencer asked. "It can be really annoying sometimes." "Sorry, man, I'm a realist. That glass is half empty." "Yeah, well, it's a lot more enjoyable when you pretend that it's half full." Sean walked over to the hole they had pulled the safe from and looked inside. A perfectly square ditch sat before him, a quarter filled with water. And just at the top, only the very tip being partially visible, was a shiny blue crystal. Sean felt drowsy as he stared. "Spencer, come here. Check this out." Spencer walked to the hole where Sean was standing. "Yeah? What is it?" "Look," Sean said, pointing into the hole. Both of them stared at the rock for a long time without saying a word, as if caught in a trance. Minutes seemed to go by before either of them reacted. "Is that a diamond?" Spencer asked, breaking the lasting silence. Sean felt his heart jump faster. Sean felt his heart pump faster as his mind prepared to answer. He had never seen a rock like this before. "No. At least I don't think so. Aren't diamonds transparent?" Sean felt winded, as if he needed to concentrate just to keep himself from drifting out of reality. He felt dizzy, like the world was turning beneath his feet. He looked at Spencer when he didn't immediately reply, and that was when Sean noticed his friend was standing as still as a frozen statue. "Spencer, are you okay?" He said nothing to respond and remained completely motionless. In the distance, Sean saw that none of the trees were moving. He also noticed a group of blackbirds hovering midair, their wings stuck at half flap. Everything had gone stiff. What was going on? Spencer, he called again. Sean's voice echoed away from his mouth as if the nearest object was miles away. The forest seemed to steal the sound straight from his throat. Grab the stone, said a slithery-sounding whisper. The noise was like a voiceless gust of wind. Sean whipped around, looking for the intruder who had spoken up. The sound of the voice was so familiar it brought goosebumps to Sean's skin. Who's there? For a moment, the forest was silent. Then Sean heard laughter echoing around the mine shaft like a bowl of liquid sound. The cloudy sky above was darkening. He looked at the crystal and immediately reached into the hole, but not by the strength of his own will. No, Sean realized he was just as much watching himself perform the action as he was carrying it out. His fingers dipped into the murky brown water and gripped the surface of the stone, squeezing tightly. Sean's arm retreated from the pool. He felt a strain upon his muscles, something to the effect of the crystal being anchored down. With a swift tug and an underwater popping sound, the stone became loose once more. Sean couldn't do anything but stare at his own arm as if it belonged to someone else. He couldn't understand what was happening. He watched his knuckles reveal themselves from the water, and within his grip was a thumb-sized blue rock locked inside a simple metal setting. It was attached to a silver chain at one end. Something seemed to be weighing down the necklace. As Sean's arm pulled more slack from the puddle, a skeletal hand emerged, the fingers wrapped in a death grip around the necklace's chain. Sean felt like a captured animal. His heart pounded faster as he struggled to release or even look away from the bony hand. The only thing he could do was whip his eyes around in utter panic. No, stop! Let go of me! Sean soon learned that he wasn't quite controlling his lungs anymore either, so the more he panicked, the less efficiently his meager breaths were satisfying his increasing oxygen needs. Sean watched as he reached up and snapped off bony fingers from the skeleton's hand, one by one dropping them back into the water with a splash. The final finger broke, dislodging the hand from the chain before it fell back into the hole, drenching Sean's face with puddle water. Sean tried to look anywhere but the crystal's translucent blue surface. Then, a warming sensation ran between his fingers. He saw, deep within the walls of the blue rock, a tiny black cyclone, draining darkness out of existence. It looked just like a black hole in space, floating, suspended midair. Sean's mind ran blank, like sleep was pouring across his thoughts. He could feel the smooth, flawless surface of the stone as his fingers slid across its edge. He then noticed a vibration coming from inside. Emanating from within the black hole, a hazy white pulse escaped from its unfathomable depths, like a pressure wave of light. Seconds later, red sparks flowed out from the center of the darkness. Only a few emerged at first, but then the sparks revealed themselves more rapidly, turning from dull red to a bright burning orange in a flurry of quick bursts. The entrance to the cyclone looked like a Roman candle on Independence Day. Sparks shot out of the darkness and bounced embers off the inner wall before swirling back into the hole like a twisting faucet of light. The orange was joined by yellow as the intensity increased, and so too did the temperature. Sean felt like he was losing himself, like he and his mind were altogether slipping into the dark hole. The colors were so beautiful, and the warmth so relaxing. "He stole it from us," the whispers accused, the sound like a snake wriggling into Sean's ears. At the corner of his eyes, Sean saw what looked like the shadowy silhouette of a person crossed between the trees. He tried to look where the figure had gone, but his eyes couldn't reach the location. He tried as hard as he could to turn his neck, but his body refused to respond. The sky above was quickly turning black. The branches in the trees swung with quick, violent whips. The sparks in the crystal were illuminating the surrounding forest and mine entrance with bright flashes of light. As he scanned the area, Sean noticed dark silhouettes of people everywhere he wasn't looking. They seemed to be gathering in a wide circle around him, slowly closing in. There were hundreds of them. "Please stop," he screamed, feeling his voice shake. "I didn't steal anything." The shadow people drew closer. Sean could see anger and despair on all their faces. They reached, stretching their arms towards his face, their fingers curling and uncurling just inches away from his cheek. Booms of thunder echoed across the sky, snapping Sean back to reality. Hot blood rushed to his fingertips. He fell back and splashed down into a puddle of mud. Sean felt as if he'd come back to himself, but things were different. His clothes were soaked and dripping, and not just from the puddle, from rain. Heavy drops were presently pelting his head and back. Sean could see, all around the place where he was just standing, deep footprints marking the mud, as if a crowd of dozens had been around him. He gazed across the pitch-black forest for intruders, but everyone was gone. Even the lockbox that he and Spencer had only moments before dragged out of the ground was no longer there, and then Sean noticed that Spencer had disappeared too. "Hello?" No answer returned, only the slowly increasing winds. Sean climbed to his feet and looked around. "Spencer, where are you?" Again, no answer. It would have been far too quiet without the gentle rain slapping the mud or the wind stirring the branches. Sean tried to remain calm, but he was still in shock from all that had just gone on. His hands were shaking, his head was pounding, and his fingers felt like they'd been ground to dust. He tried scanning the darkness for Spencer one last time, in the vain hope he might see some trace of him left, but there was nothing for his eyes to find. In the faraway distance of the forest, a high-pitched scream echoed throughout the thousands of trees around Sean. The attack seemed to come from everywhere. The mine shaft, the forests, above and over the top of the cliff. Sean flinched and covered his ears as a wave of immense terror streaked through him. The sound was loud enough to pierce his hand flesh and prick at his eardrums like needles. They weren't the screams of someone in danger or pain, but someone with rage in their voice, furiously racing towards the place where Sean now stood. The wailing grew louder and closer until a heavy gust blasted itself against Sean's chest. The screaming twirled around his head like a cloud of screeching bats. At the whim of the panic streaking through him, Sean sprinted through the rain and pitch-black forest towards the boulders which led to the trail. He could hardly see anything. The day had gone dark. He reached up and wiped a glaze of rain off his face. From behind, Sean heard the wind swirl and scream as if it was in pursuit. The ridge came alive with swinging leaves and snapping branches, swaying and breaking in the moist blasts of air. Sean reached into his pocket, shakily trying to wedge free his phone from the soaked denim. Once he fished the device out of its soggy cage, he pressed the unlock button and tried to swipe the touchscreen to activate the flashlight. But the screen wouldn't even turn on. The rain had killed it. Sean threw his phone to the ground and climbed. He tried his best to navigate the rocks he and Spencer had descended earlier. After grabbing the ledge above, Sean kicked and pushed to get over the top as quickly as he could. He was halfway up when 5 cold fingers swept against the back of Sean's neck. A moment later, a firm tug at the collar of his shirt nearly sent him tumbling back to the ground. Sean felt chills race up his spine, followed by a massive surge of adrenaline. He flopped over the rocks and onto the top of the cliff. Wasting no time, Sean jumped to his feet and dashed up the trail. The rain streaked into his eyes as he ran, causing the path ahead to be almost indiscernible without the help of distant orange streetlights sparkling through the leaves. The chains guarding the trail got closer, and one after another Sean jumped, leaving them behind in the distance. He turned up the road towards his house at the abandoned end of town and ran like he had never run before. End of chapter.